Exodus, the second book of the Bible, continues the narrative begun in Genesis by chronicling the liberation of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt and their establishment as a covenant community under God's guidance. The book opens with the oppression of the descendants of Jacob in Egypt and traces their deliverance through Moses, a central figure chosen to confront Pharaoh and lead the people to freedom. Notable events include the 10 plagues, the institution of the Passover, the miraculous crossing of the Red Sea, the revelation of the Ten Commandments at Mount Sinai, and the construction of the tabernacle as a place of worship. Exodus is typically divided into two primary sections: the liberation narrative, chapters 1 through 18, which details the escape from Egypt and God's provision in the wilderness, and the covenant narrative, chapters 19 to 40, which focuses on the establishment of the law and the formalization of Israel's relationship with God. Time period covered: Exodus spans roughly 80 years, from the birth of Moses to the Israelites' encampment at Mount Sinai, where they receive the law and prepare to enter the Promised Land. The events are traditionally dated to either the 15th century BC, circa 1446 BC, based on 1 Kings 6:1, or the 13th century BC, circa 1260 BC, depending on historical and archaeological interpretations. This places the narrative within the late Bronze Age of the ancient Near East. Authorship: traditionally, Moses is regarded as the author of Exodus, a view rooted in Jewish and Christian tradition that attributes the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, to him. However, modern biblical scholarship often suggests that Exodus, like Genesis, may have been compiled from multiple sources over time, potentially including oral traditions and written documents. This theory, known as the documentary hypothesis, posits contributions from various authors or editors, possibly finalized during or after the Babylonian exile, 6th century BC. The question of authorship remains a subject of ongoing debate among scholars. Date of writing: the exact date of Exodus's composition is uncertain, with estimates ranging from the 15th century BC, during Moses' lifetime, to the 5th century BC, following the return from Babylonian captivity. The text likely reflects a process of transmission, preserving ancient traditions that were shaped and recorded over centuries. Its final form may have emerged in the context of Israel's need to reaffirm its identity as God's chosen people. Chapter summary: chapters 1 through 18. Liberation narrative encompassing the enslavement of the Israelites, Moses' call at the burning bush, the 10 plagues, the Passover, the Red Sea crossing, and God's provision of manna and water in the wilderness. Chapters 19 to 40. Covenant narrative, including the giving of the 10 Commandments, the establishment of the covenant at Sinai, detailed instructions for the tabernacle, the incident of the golden calf, and the completion of the tabernacle as a center of worship. Exodus serves as a pivotal text in the Judeo-Christian tradition, illustrating God's power, faithfulness, and intent to form a people dedicated to His service, while setting the stage for the broader biblical narrative of redemption. Key takeaways and messages: Exodus presents several enduring themes and lessons that resonate throughout Scripture and contribute to its theological and historical significance. Divine power and sovereignty: the plagues and the parting of the Red Sea, Exodus 7 through 14, demonstrate God's supreme authority over nature and human rulers, establishing Him as the sovereign creator and deliverer. Liberation and redemption: the Exodus from Egypt is a foundational story of deliverance, symbolizing freedom from oppression and foreshadowing future acts of salvation within the biblical narrative. Exodus 12 to 15. Covenant and law: the revelation of the 10 Commandments and the covenant at Sinai, Exodus 19 to 20, formalize the relationship between God and Israel, providing a moral and legal framework that defines their identity and responsibilities as His people. Faith and obedience: figures like Moses and the Israelites are tested in their trust and adherence to God's commands, as seen in Moses' reluctant leadership, Exodus 3 to 4, and the people's response to the law, highlighting the importance of faithfulness amid challenges. Human sinfulness and mercy: the golden calf incident, Exodus 32, reveals humanity's tendency toward idolatry and disobedience, yet God's forgiveness after Moses' intercession underscores His mercy and patience. Worship and presence. The detailed instructions for the tabernacle, Exodus 25 to 40, emphasize God's desire to dwell among his people, establishing a pattern of worship and communion that shapes Israel's religious life. Providence and guidance. From the pillar of cloud and fire to the provision of manna, Exodus 13:16, God's care sustains the Israelites, illustrating his ongoing guidance through adversity. Overall, Exodus weaves together historical events and theological insights, laying a critical foundation for understanding God's relationship with humanity. It explores themes of deliverance, covenant fidelity, and divine presence, offering a narrative that bridges the patriarchal promises of Genesis with the unfolding story of Israel's journey to the Promised Land.